2 million years after the end of humanity, a mother gave birth to an ugly baby before being hit by lightning. The ugly baby lost all of his body parts except for his disgusting skull because his father found God in a ghetto temple the day he was born. God tried to get away, but Almighty killed him with his sword. He then made a deal with the 12 heavenly demons, promising to kill his eldest child to become the world's strongest leader. He told the midwife to kill his son and hide all the proof, and she did. The fat child made it to a river, where she was about to drown it. But when she saw a boat off in the distance, she changed her mind and threw him down the river instead. As soon as the gross hag pushed him away, a famous demon showed up and ate him. An ugly blind elder, on the other hand, could feel the demon and used his blade to kill it with one blow. That's when he realized there was a baby in the boat who was filled with God's old power. On the other side of the world, someone pulled a weak victim to be crucified with all the other enemy soldiers they had killed. But when the man saw his wife being killed by his own knights, he couldn't take it anymore. He chose to ECI himself by passionately hugging the ground. The man did live, though, and lost his sight in one eye. But as he got closer to a strange boat, he saw the body of the baby that had been cut up but was still alive after all these years. The man took care of the gross child and even made him fake limbs and skin. But he knew the child was emotionally dead and couldn't feel any pain. He trained him his whole life to be the coldest super soldier in the world and gave him the name Heikamaru, which is a Japanese word for 100 devils. But after killing thousands of demons and getting covered in their blood, Heikamaru's godly power is unleashed, and the leg he had lost when he was 16 years old grows back. The old man wished he hadn't taught Heikamaru how to kill, but Heikamaru touched his face for the first time and hugged the man who raised him like he was his father before leaving him for good. After that, Heikamaru traveled the world for 3 billion years without eating until he saw a child named Dorror getting beat up for taking money from 3 mean men. Before they left, though, Dorror threw a stone at their leader, which hurt him. The fatso then started drowning Dorror and told his men to bring the sword to kill him. But as they walked away, they caught a glimpse of Hayabusa in the distance. He was looking at the demon he saw in the water instead of them. As soon as the demon launched itself, it ate the fat in one blow. The other lackey tried to run away, but the demon also swallowed them up. Heikamaru cut off its arm and threw Dorror away just as it was about to eat her. It then ran away to avoid its attacks and destroy the bridge. The beast kept trying to swallow him, but Heikamaru kept cutting into the bridge's roots, which made the bridge fall apart while the monster was chasing him and killing the demon under the rubble. At that very moment, Heikamaru's mask fell off, and he grew new skin as one of the 12 demons was destroyed by lightning in the distance. Demon's second son showed his mother the dove he caught at the same time, but she couldn't stop missing her first son and looked at the statue of the goddess who died that day. They eventually started going to a nearby village. On the way, Dorror learned that Hayabusa could see the outline of people's souls even though he was blind. He could also find demons by the red colors their souls gave off. Finally, they got to the village. But just as they were about to sleep in the horse barns that night, a strange demon came to ring the hell bells and then left without saying anything. The chief took them to meet Lady Bandai, the local priestess, the next morning. The priestess said she was sorry for how she looked and that she hadn't been able to use her legs since Tyrone hurt her back. Heikamaru felt the presence of a monster and started to attack her, even though Dorror thought she was beautiful. But Dorror held him off until the other locals came and took him away. They then put them both in jail. The blind elder showed up and said they had locked him up for the same reason Dorror was wondering why he was trying to kill the hot girl. He did say that he could see the souls of the demons, and he knew that Hayabusa was the baby that had been thrown away. Right then, they both felt the presence of another demon. Heikamaru ran to cut off the demon's arm, and then he and Moon jumped into a well together. They went through the secret tunnels until they got to the priestess's room. Heikamaru slammed her door open before she showed her true form. Right away, Heikamaru tried to jump at her, but she pushed him away with her tail and then opened all of her arms to reach him. He closed the gap between them and thrust his swords into her eyes. But the village chief stopped him in time and told the demon to leave as soon as he cut the cloak. Heikamaru started to chase the monster through the forest, but Bai was able to catch him with the bamboo sticks before she could kill him. The demon rang the hell bells again, but when she turned around, Heikamaru was gone, and he jumped out of the sky and slashed her in the head, killing her right then. As Bai showed her hot form again, she realized that one of the 12 demons had failed to sacrifice him. But before she could say anything else, Heikamaru pierced her face and killed her for good. The demon kept ringing hell's bells until it broke apart. When Dorror looked on the ground, he found thousands of gold coins hidden there. This is the money that Bai kept taking from the adventurers she killed. The chief told the demons that this was the only way their village could stay alive, so he gave up his life for the gold. 2 of the 12 demons were also killed at the same time, which fixed Hayabusa's nervous system and let him hear again. That night in the forest, the sounds of all the animals were too much for him to handle. Dorror wondered how he could hear anything when it was completely quiet everywhere else, so he put a cloth over his ears to block out the noise and told them not to hunt demons until he was better. Then Heikamaru saw a monster in the forest, and right away, a big bird flew between them. He pulled out his sword, and just in time, the monster came back. But it flew back at them and almost grabbed him. The noise of the falling leaves confused him, so the bird was able to hit him on the ground when it came back. Heikamaru was able to hit it, but the bird tried to take him away, so he used the chance to hurt it. That is until Muni showed up and quickly cut it in half when it came back to kill him. Dorror then saw that Heikamaru was not paying attention and tried to wake him up, but he was pretty much dead inside. When Heikamaru woke up the next morning, he heard a voice singing and followed it to the river. When he got there, he saw that the artist was a girl, and the purity of her soul made him want to be close to her. She found out he was blind when he tried to touch her, but he almost passed out in her arms. She saw Dorror and Muni and thought they were probably his friends. As they got settled in an old empty temple, they saw that Heikamaru was very sick from his wounds. Muni said it looked like he was probably starting to act like a real person. When Mio got there, she told them to stay until Hayabusa was better, and showed them 6 orphans she was taking care of. The kids then showed up in front of them, and Mio told them they were war survivors. Tako told the others to leave and told me to get some sleep before her night shift because he was now in charge. Later that day, Dorror went to see Teo and offered to help him with his work. Teo said no, saying that he wanted to work as hard as his sister Mio. When Dorror saw Muni getting ready to leave, he told him he would find a safe way through the forest and come back later. Someone sent word to Deo that the Saki clan was waiting at their border and that they were running out of food because it hadn't rained in weeks. Mina then showed up and said that the past was beginning to happen again. Mo went to the temple to see how Heikamaru was doing and saw that he was very hot from a fever. She promised to bring him some healing potions on her way back from night duty because she knew he needed them. As she started to sing, he wished she would never leave and would always be with him. Muni found a path through the creek in the bush and thought it would be a better place for Mio and the other kids to live. He soon saw a demon deep in a hole though, and decided that this place wasn't safe after all. When Mio got back to the village the next day, she saw Hayakimaru waiting outside and decided to give him the medicine she had brought. Yet he told her to sing instead, and Dorror replied that her voice would likely wake him up. After she started singing, Muni came in and told them about the place he found in the bush. He said it would be a good place to hide when the war starts. He did say, though, that there was already a big monster living on the land, and that it would only be safe once it was gone. After hearing what he said, Hayakimaru went into the bush without stopping. When Muni saw that he wasn't getting better, he chose to follow him for support. Now that the guys were gone, Neo told them she was going to work for both villages getting ready for war, because it was the fastest way to make more money. So Dorror swore to follow her and protect her if she got into any trouble. The boys thought it was too risky. As he followed her into the forest that night, he learned that her job was to work on the plot with the soldiers. He was saddened by what he saw and how much she had to deal with every day. Hayakimaru and Muni got to the big hole at the same time that they saw the monster. Heikamaru pulled out his swords, but Muni saw that he was still sick from being hurt. It was Muni's idea to tell him to wait until he was better. But the monster dug into the ground and pulled them deep into the hole. Hayakimaru jumped off the rocks and flew with the monster. Muni slashed it from behind, which made it turn its attention. Once it was no longer paying attention, Hayakimaru stabbed it in the head, but the demon grabbed him and started pulling him deep into the ground. Muni was able to save him, but Hayakimaru started screaming in terrible pain because the demon had taken off half of his leg. That night, when Dorror went back to the temple, he saw Muni and Hayakimaru. As soon as he saw Hayakimaru's cut leg, he passed out from shock, and Muni told him that the demon had eaten it. But when Muni saw that Hayakimaru was groaning in pain, he told him that he could now also talk. When Mio got there in the morning, she saw that Hayakimaru was hurt and asked Muni what happened. He told her that he would be okay. Before she cleaned his wound, Dorror saw her scars and ran away because of what he saw. Teo found him a short time later and asked him why he had left, but Dorror chose to remain silent about what he had seen. After he asked if he had ever seen Mio at work, Teo told him that it was his job to watch over the orphans who were still living because of Mio's sacrifice. Though Taharu wanted to go to fight when he got to Deo's village, told him he was still a child, and told him to play with his small sword with his mom. When Mina came in, Taharu begged her to play with his sword, but she didn't listen because she thought he was a spoiled brat. But Taharu saw that she had been lying about caring about him since he was born, and asked whose sword she was really worried about. He was sure she was keeping a secret from him, and hoped to find out what it was one day. At the temple, Hyakkimaru's thoughts kept going back to what had happened, and when he tried to go to the forest, he hurt himself and fell. But Mio rushed to help him calm down by being there for him. He was frozen with fear when she asked him to talk, but he couldn't. She began to sing for him. As Muni watched them, he saw that Mio's singing voice was soothing the monster that was beginning to appear in Hyakkimaru's mind. As he was leaving, he told Dorror that he would stay in the bush for now, and told her that Hyakkimaru's demon flames could turn him into a monster one day. That night, as Mio was leaving for work, she told Dorror that she had seen him the night before, and that this was their only way to stay alive. That's why he chose to forgive her and told her she was brave. He would never hate her for giving up her life for the other kids. He ran right up to the temple, glad that he had finally made peace with her. At the temple, Hyakkimaru started to cut down wood to use as a replacement for his leg. But Dorror fed him because she thought that was the only way he could get stronger again. Yet he hoped Hyakkimaru would never turn evil, and told him he was his only friend in the whole world. Hyakkimaru fixed the wood by morning and was training with his sword, while the orphans looked at his sword arms. They chose to show him some secret swords, and Teo told him they got them on the battlefield. At the same time, Mio started to go to work, but an Ishikawa clan fighter saw her and thought she might be a spy, when all the other kids were asleep. Dorror noticed that Hyakkimaru had left the temple that night. He thought he must have gone to fight the demon at the hole. He pulled out his swords and was ready to fight. As he fell into the hole, the demon's claws started to hit him, and it began to rain. During this, the animal bit off another leg of his. He quickly jumped very high and stabbed it in the mouth, killing it instantly. Right then, the rain stopped, and the figure of Deo broke in half. Tako told Mio that Hyakkimaru had gone off to fight the monster when she got to the temple, so she took off right away. At that moment, a group of Ishikawa guards showed up and followed her to the temple. The boy was glad to see that his leg was better as Hyakkimaru and Dorror started to go home. But when Hyakkimaru heard those words, he knew that the temple was on fire and that troops were killing the orphans without any mercy. All of Dorro's friends were dead when he got there, and the boss asked him if he was one of the spies. He said Mio was seen going into the enemy camp right after leaving them, which made him think she was selling them. Even though Dorror thought he could save her, the man caught him and threw him to the ground. But when he tried to kill him, Hyakkimaru cut off his hand, so the guys rushed up to him right away. Hyakkimaru found out at that very moment that Mio was going to die, and this made him go crazy. So he stabbed the first soldier and then started killing the others because he was crazy and wanted payback. When Dorror saw this, he remembered what Muni had said and thought that Hyakkimaru might turn into a monster. He stopped Hyakkimaru before he could kill the boss, letting the man get away. She showed him a pouch and told him it was full of seed rice. She also told him that Mio's dream was to one day build a rice farm for the kids so she could feed them rice patties. He told him to keep it and never forget Mio's hopes because after the war, they had only eaten burnt rice patties. Hyakkimaru said his first word, Mio. They buried all the bodies before you left the temple. As they continued their journey, all they could hear was Mio's sweet voice singing, which pushed them to keep going with their bad lives. At night, Dorror tried to ask Hyakkimaru if he was hungry, but he only held on to the pouch. Soon Dorror heard whispers in the forest and thought that the two lovers were probably making plans behind the bushes. Being angry about the thought made him throw rocks at the trees, but a basket almost hit him and hurt him. He then saw a spider in front of him, so Hyakkimaru ran up the tree right away. He cut the webs in an instant, and a man fell to the ground. But Dorror saw that the man was probably crazy. As Hyakkimaru flew with the monster, he slashed it right away, but the monster made a web around him and tied him to a tree, then quickly ran away. When they saw a town later that night, Dorror suggested that they stay there for the night. The monster agreed, thinking it would be the best place for her to rest. When they got to the village, they were told they needed a pass to get in. A guard also told them that someone was taking the locals hostage. A person from the village saw the woman on the side of the road in the morning, but she pushed him away and claimed to be scared. He called her to his house and said he would make her some food when he saw that she was sick. But she saw it as her chance to drain his life force and knew she could use him up like an empty doll. When they got to his house, he said his name was Yajiro and asked her if she had a name. He gave her the name Ohagi because he thought she was hungry when she said she didn't have one. He chose to give her a bowl of rice, which she thought was very tasty. When he asked her where she was from, she told him to be quiet and that she would leave his hellhole when she was fully recovered. He said he would come back when it got dark, and he started to walk away. She thought he was a strange man. Yujiro got home late at night and saw that Ohagi's illness was getting worse. He thought she might not have eaten all day. He saw a cockroach right then and chose to let it go outside. The moment Ohagi saw this, he asked himself why, compared to everyone else, he chose to spare it. He then told her that each life was unique. She was moved by what he said and told him that she had never met anyone like him. However, while they slept that night, she crawled over to him and tried to eat him alive. But she realized she was hungry and chose to finish her meal before going back to bed. She thought he was a unique person and wanted to know everything about him. When morning came, Dorror was tired from looking around the town and was wondering where the spider might be. Later that day, though, Dorror learned that another neighbor had gone missing. She didn't understand how that could be possible since there had been no monsters that night. Ohagi's condition got even worse, so Yaju told her that there were no doctors in the town and that she would have to get a traveler's pass before she could leave. He offered to sneak her outside. At the same time, Hei, Kimaru, and Dorror were eating wheat for dinner. Dorror was sure they would die of hunger if they stayed in the town any longer. Both Yaju and Ohagi were running quickly to the secret exit at the same time, but soon they ran into Hei, Kimaru, and Dorror. When Ohagi realized who they were, she thought maybe they were waiting to kill her, but this only made Dorror think she was the spider. So he told Hei and Kimaru to attack her, but Yaju chose to keep her safe and told everyone that he was the one who took her. The guards then showed up and said they would kill Yaju for sneaking people out of the town. Dorror tried to say that he found him first and should get the prize, but the leader told them that there was never a reward and that the whole thing was just a trick to get them to admit it. Even though he told his men to capture them, Ohagi bound them with her webs and quickly killed them. Like Hei, Kimaru could feel her red soul shining again. He pulled out his sword and tried to attack her, but she bound him with her robe and ran off with her man while Dorror freed him. Hei, Kimaru ran after them with a whistle to call for the others. Ohagi wanted to get away, so she threw a web to the top of the mountain and pulled them up. Yaju felt stronger when she saw this. She told him she wanted him to be by her side forever, even though he thought he wasn't useful to her right now. When Yaju asked her if she kills people after taking their life force, she told him that she always saves their lives but takes their life force anyway. He offered himself to her because he was tired of being alone, and this was all he wanted to hear. They finally got to the secret cave. Yaju told her to find her way out, but she suggested that they leave together because his name had already been found out, and she didn't think he would be safe here. As soon as he agreed, though, arrows went through his body, and Ohagi knew that the soldiers had found them. As she got mad, she stopped the arrows and quickly bound the men, taking away their life force. She turned into a spider at that moment and caught the others. But Hei, Kimaru cut her web as he cut off her leg. He was pushed away, and she told Yaju that she would not leave him. But when Hei, Kimaru wouldn't let her go, Yaju begged him not to kill her and said he wanted to stay with her forever. Hei, Kimaru then chose to leave her alone. The next day they kept traveling, and Dorror saw that Hei, Kimaru was beginning to smile. Later, after a few days, Dorror started to wonder why Hei, Kimaru wasn't talking to him now that he could talk again. When they saw some strange-looking people bringing a girl to the top of the mountain, Dorror thought it was probably a bridal parade, but she didn't understand why the bride was sad. At that moment, a boy slid down the mountain to try to stop the group, but before he could fire another arrow, the wind blew it away. He tried to kill the beautiful bride, but Dorror stopped him and said he wouldn't let him. The boy thought Dorror was stupid and told him that the girl was his sister and was getting married to a monster. As he tried to leave, Dorror offered to help him, telling him that Hei, Kimaru, could beat any monster. Soon, they got to the top of the mountain, where Saru showed them a dark, mysterious cloud over their town. He said the monster's name was Nakasero, and that it came to eat their people almost every day. And so, to stay out of trouble, they started giving the monster girls. This kept the village safe. However, Dorror didn't understand and asked why girls were being offered to the monster in particular. Not even Saru knew, as he thought he could con this wimp. Dorror offered to save her, but said it would cost something. So Saru gave him worms and a small piece of gold as payment. When Dorror realized he might be able to sell it, Saru offered to give him more if they were successful. Dorror agreed to help Saru, and Saru introduced himself. When the other locals came back a few hours later, Dorror and Saru beat the guards up, and Saru chose to set Genie free. But his sister told him she couldn't go down the mountain because she was afraid the demon would eat the whole town instead of her. Saru told her to stay alive. She told him that her life wasn't as important as other people's though. Dorror then told her that they would kill the monster, and Kimaru pulled out his sword to show that he was ready. As soon as the dark cloud started to rise toward them, the guards almost peed themselves. In an instant, they were sucked into the clouds, and as they heard a roar, their bodies were dumped to the ground. Dorror tried to tell Kimaru, that the demon was in the sky, but a wall of evil flame blocked his view. Before they knew it, a huge centipede came down from the sky and tried to eat Saru. Genie pushed him out of the way, but the centipede ate him instead. Dao thought they might not have a chance when they saw the huge monster, but when it came back, Dorror tried to warn Hayak and Kimaru, but he still couldn't see. Luckily, hot water erupted from a fountain, casting a bright beam into the darkness that scared the demon away. The dark clouds disappeared right away. Saru was sad that his sister had died because he would never see her again. Dorror decided to follow him home, but when they got to where he lived in the woods, Saru told them that he lived alone. As he thought about how they could get back at her, Dorror told him that he had the right plan, but that Kimaru was probably not useful at this point. They saw that the cloud had grown bigger and ashes started falling from the sky as they realized it was the skin of the centipede. They also saw that it was getting even bigger. For some reason, Saru believed they had no chance against something so huge, but Dorror told them that the sun was its weak point. The next day, Dorror claimed to be a new bride and successfully got the monster to come out. The monster started running away right away, and as he did so, he jumped into a hole to avoid it. He then came out of the hole to draw the centipede's attention and started running away again. He slipped though, and the monster tried to eat him right then. Luckily, he made it into the hole. Saru was waiting on the mountain at the same time. As soon as he saw the monster, he shot a fiery arrow at the geyser, which caused it to erupt in a huge blast that killed the monster. Just as the sun came up, it put out the fire and sent out more smoke to cover the area before rising high to kill. At that very moment, Kimaru used a rock to get the monster's attention and then shot 3 arrows at it while running at it. He hit it hard in the face, making it crash. It was still alive though, and its tentacle almost hit him before it knocked him away. Dorror thought he could get Kimaru's attention on the monster, so he jumped off the mountain and landed on top of it. He screamed at Kimaru to follow the sound of his voice, and the monster ran off quickly, smashing through a rock on the way. A stone hit Dorror and knocked her out. At that moment, Kimaru started screaming desperately to get the demon's attention, but he was pushed away. He kept screaming though, and was able to stop the demon before it ate him. As he took the blow, the beast threw him high into the sky, but Dorror told him what to do with his voice, and he pierced its eye, which made it come out of the clouds, and its skin started to melt. Kimaru jumped into its mouth and tore it in half right away, killing the monster and making it disappear. As they fell into a river, Dorror was glad they had made it through the fight. After a short time, Saru saw Genie in the water and knew she was still alive, so he was glad to see her again. This episode ends here. If you want to see the next part, then subscribe to our channel. We will upload the next part soon.